Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for standing by and welcome to the Information Security Mitigating Risk Through Awareness webinar. During the presentation, all participants will be in a listen-only mode. If you would like to ask a question during the presentation, please use the chat feature located in the lower left corner of your screen. If you need to reach an operator at any time, please press *0. As a reminder, this conference is being recorded Thursday, March 13th, 2014, and I would now like to turn the conference over to Adam Langley. Please go ahead, sir.
All right. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today for our Information Security Mitigating Risk Through Awareness webinar. This webinar is brought to you by Workplace Answers, and your presenter today is Rick Rojo. Whether you're a regular with us or this is your first time joining, we're happy to have you with us today. And before we get going, I'd like to tell you a little bit about us. Workplace Answers offers the most compelling and interactive online compliance training solutions in the industry. We bring cutting-edge courseware and the latest training applications together with a dedicated professional services team to transform the way you educate your workforce. Today's presenter, Rick Rojo, has over 10 years in the information security e-learning industry as a former CEO of a network solutions company. He has a distinguished background in sales management and the technical implementation of courseware for enterprise-level organizations. Rick has experience working with high-profile clients and learner demands ranging from 40,000 to 140,000 users and contract values upwards of $8 million. A few housekeeping items before we get started. All audio will come through your computer speakers today, so please ensure that your volume is turned up. You may submit questions to the speaker at any time today by typing them through the chat feature located to the left of your screen. Questions will be addressed at the end as time allows. And as a reminder, today's call is being recorded. Unfortunately, we won't be able to provide the actual PowerPoint slides from the presentation, but all registrants and attendees will receive an email in the next couple of days with information on how to view an archived recording of the webinar and download a key takeaways document. You may receive a call from one of our reps after the webinar to ensure that you receive the link to the recording and to get your thoughts on the webinar and see if there are any ways we might be able to help you with any of the issues discussed in today's webinar. We'll be conducting a few polling questions during the presentation, so just click the radio buttons with the answer that is most relevant to you. And while your individual responses will be kept private during the presentation, we will display the overall results for everyone after they come in. And we'll go ahead and do our first polling question. What would you consider to be your top security threats for 2014? And you can choose one or two of these: mobile devices, malware, third-party apps, cloud security policy. Just select the two that you think are the greatest security threats. And we're waiting for the responses to come in.
Yeah, and I'm seeing those numbers kind of populating.
All right. Looks like we've got most of the results in now. We'll go ahead and close it and check out the results. Okay, so malware's in the front. And
yeah,
all right. I'll hand this off to Rick at this time. Take it away, Rick.
Thank you, Adam, and thank you everyone for joining us today. Very interested in looking at some of the initial responses to this poll. One thing, I've been in this industry probably, again, for like 10 or 15 years and ran a network security company back in about 2000, which ranged anywhere from writing security policies to doing vulnerability assessments. Now, what you're looking at today is kind of a messaging that we're going to have throughout this presentation, but it's really in when I had initially started doing, had a network security company several years ago, some of the challenge that we had with evaluating vulnerabilities within the organization, a lot of it had to do with obviously locking down the data security and making sure that the networks are tied down. But one of the bigger variables is the human factor. And what you're looking at here, from mobile devices to malware, a lot of these are tools that are being used internally inside your organizations that makes the ability to communicate an effective security awareness policy even that much more challenging. So malware, that's not a surprise, and mobile devices, those are kind of the two that I predicted would be moving up there, and I think cloud security is kind of moving up there too. So we're just going to kind of move right into the program. So there's a couple things that I want to accomplish today. So what I would like to do is provide you some tools in making a case for implementing a security awareness program. And this is going to include some of the financial tools that are necessary to communicate that type of message, as well as implementing a security awareness program. So two variables, again, that I think are going to be important throughout this entire process. One of them is what's important to a corporation, whether it's reputation, protecting their data, and how all of these things tie together. So what we'll be doing today is we're going to be going through both of these different items. What I do hope to do is give you some anecdotes as well as some recommendations for how we approach different awareness programs in different industries. So let's take a look at the hard data. A lot of this information, some of you might have been familiar with it. Verizon and as well as InfoSec has some pretty pertinent information that has to do with cybercrime statistics. The big glaring one, obviously, is $300 billion to $1 trillion is the annual losses from cyber activity. And a lot of this can be based, and you see a lot of stuff in the news about this too. More specifically, a retail organization recently had about 40 million of their credit card files stolen. And I'll go through a little bit of that impact throughout the presentation, but it will show you not only that creating a security awareness program is not important just because you're educating your people, but it's also important in terms of protecting the integrity of the organization, the reputation of the organization, and it has effects that range all over the place, all the way down to the shareholder level. So one thing you're going to notice too, so company breached, average annual cost per company breach, $11.6 million. One thing that you're going to find, and what I had done in prior experiences, we would literally go in and we would have people that, we'll just say they were called white hat people. And a lot of you IT people know what that means. But we would have people that would go into an actual corporation and they would basically use whatever software they had, and they would try to break into the network, and they would say, okay, these are the issues with your network. Well, one of the variables that was used even back in 2000 was something that we're probably familiar with called social networking. And I'm sorry, not social networking, social engineering in terms of actually calling and trying to get information out of a corporation so that you can get those tools and actually break into a network. That was when we had a very different internet than we have today. So what you're going to be able to find out throughout this is the impact, not just on what you do to protect your network from a technical perspective, but also the impact that actually training and putting a program in place can actually, how that can help you in the long term. The other number I wanted to show is identities exposed. 232.4 million identities exposed. If you are a company that deals with credit card transactions, if you are a healthcare organization, you will know that there's a lot of rules and regulations that are tied to fines and fees associated with that type of breach. And then, and so that's the basis kind of what we're looking at. So we have obviously a lot of real financial data supporting losses within organizations, and we'll go into a little bit more detail on that later. So financial impact of the breach. I I think when I first started in the network security industry, everything was just associated with, maybe a hacker broke into there, a hacker took information. But what you're going to find too, from a financial impact standpoint, a lot of this has to do with, how does it affect the internal workings of your organization? Does it affect your customer turnover? Increased customer acquisition efforts? Are your competitors coming out and grabbing your clients because of some information that they have access to? And then I think what you'll notice too, specifically, so retail organization that had the breach, and we all know who that is, reputational loss. That is a significant thing that not only requires several years to recover from, but it requires an extensive marketing effort just to communicate, why people need to trust those organizations again. And that obviously has a pretty good impact. And then in addition to that, what we want to do is talk about Department of Justice. The expense of an actual security breach is going to extend into actual fines, and then obviously coming up with a resolution. These are all going to be impactful on the organization.
All right, we're here at our second polling question. The question is, what is keeping your workplace from a successful security awareness program? And you can choose the two most relevant options for you. Executive level buy-in, having an adequate budget, finding the best training solution, or other. What is the main two things keeping your workplace from a successful security awareness program? All right, still got some answers coming in. And we'll go ahead and close the poll now. All right, take it away, Rick.
Yeah, it's interesting. So having an adequate budget. Give you an example, and this tends to be something that resonates very well across many industries, but as an example, I have a customer that I had worked with maybe 6 months ago. And one of the issues that they had, we would sit down and I wanted to understand how they're handling risk mitigation within their IT organization. I understand they probably have obviously their data, their technology protection, their information, all that stuff is in place. But when we had developed security policies back like in 10 or 15 years ago, the idea was to give people a guideline of what is required to keep your organization safe. So one of the challenges is that there's not a lot of black and white into the rules of how you should engage from a data perspective. There's too many variables now, which means it's so complex to be able to communicate, what should be in place. And so one of the issues is not just that they don't have enough budget, but it's that do they know how to communicate the proper messaging to the executive group to get buy-in? So not surprised on that response. And of course, executive buy-in is not that far from there. So why invest in security training? Why is this important? Like I highlighted before, there's several different reasons. Employee misconduct and unintentional actions like errors and omissions are the greatest cause of data security breaches. So misconduct and unintentional actions. Compliance as it relates to data security is very, there's a lot of similarities between how they address, complex issues like sexual harassment or other relevant HR specific needs. You have to find a way to effectively communicate what the rules are within your organization, and it's not about them understanding what the exact message is, but they need to be equipped to be able to handle whatever habits or how you want your culture to be working within those parameters. So no surprise, obviously, misconduct and unintentional actions. The goal really is to put a program so that you're getting consistency across the board. Also, according to a recent study, over 700 IT security practitioners, 71% believe their employees put the organization's data at risk. And this isn't limited to just their computers. This is limited to their ability to get on through their mobile phones and a bunch of different areas. The other area that I really wanted to highlight is the bottom. Nearly 90% of organizations that have implemented an awareness training believe that the number of security breaches they've encountered has been reduced. And that's really the goal, is to obviously reduce those the breach and to make sure that you have a consistent culture on how you're addressing the complexity that is network security. Okay, so I think we've talked about a couple of things. Obviously, data security is different than it was back in 2000. There's a lot of different variables in there. And now, how do we get buy-in? What
Oh, looks like we're having some audio problems. Just a moment. Let's see if we can get that fixed. Our apologies for the technical difficulties here. All right, we're getting Rick reconnected here.
Hello?
All right. I believe we have Rick back with us.
That was not for a biological break, by the way. That just, no, I'm back, and apologize for the delay there. So let me kind of jump right back in, and everyone can still hear me okay. So let me go, what we're talking about now is how do we get executive buy-in and some strategies to do that. So where we're at is 49% of C-level executives rated preventing damage to the organization's reputation as their top information security priority. Preventing damage to the organization's reputation. That is something that resonates from the executive level down to all the different levels in the organization. And coming in second is fear of non-compliance with regulations. That being said, the consequences of non-compliance were their biggest fears. So they might have been obviously worrying about the reputation, but what happens if if there's no non-compliance? So some of the areas that were of concern were damage to reputation, business disruption, obviously customer turnover, revenue loss, decrease in productivity. So what you're really looking at from a security awareness program, this is something that affects the entire organization. It's not limited to just the IT department or the IT organization. And of course, some of the other areas in terms of, when they actually look at the total cost of compliance in terms of minimizing the total cost, you should include costs of non-compliance. What kind of fines are tied to it? What kind of restitution? Civil action tied to that, revenue losses from a business disruption. I had a client that had a simple malware issue that someone had opened obviously from their email or had downloaded onto their computer, and that virus kind of just was sent throughout the organization, literally almost crippled them for like half a day. What is that going to cost the organization to have to deal with those type of disruptions? And again, indirect and opportunity costs obviously are going to play a role. But the real bottom line is, from an awareness standpoint, the impact of having a consistent program is going to play some significant dividends all the way from the executive level all the way down. And some of the areas that I had highlighted, information security, like I had mentioned, affects more than just the IT department. And what I mean by that is you have a breach, the insurance in the organization obviously goes up. physical and corporate security. If they find out that that breach happened because someone got in through the building, was able to log into the network, which tends to be the easiest way to get into organizations, that obviously is going to affect that organization. Your legal bills are going to go up. So it is going to affect not just your organization, the IT department, but it's going to affect your entire organization. And what we found in terms of making a case at the executive level, once they realize all the different significant impacts it does throughout the organization, not only can you get executive buy-in, but as soon as HR and these other organizations realize the pains that are tied to this, they're also obviously going to have a vested interest. The secondary piece is pretty interesting. So customers, partners, and shareholders. So I think we can say the name of the company. So we obviously know Target had a breach. I don't know if you've all heard. I don't know if you all had to get your credit cards reissued and restated, but the impact when you're talking about banks and you're talking about retail organizations, or you're even talking about breaches that have to do with universities, is substantial. Just to give you an idea of some of the numbers, the banks alone have accumulated over $200 million. That's what the cost has been just on the bank side. They estimate that at the end of the day, Target will have spent $500 million to $1 billion on this breach that took 40 million credit card and debit card information. So it's going to affect your company. It's going to affect how you deal with your partners and your customers, and even in your shareholders. So let's just take a look at those two equations that we talked about, and let's move it one step further than that. Analysts now are projecting that the shares of that particular stock are going to be 12 to 9% lower for next year. So that is the impact. This is the case you're making from a security awareness standpoint, and this is how you develop and get that budget put together for your organization.
All right, we're at our third poll question here. Does your organization have an information security awareness training budget? Yes, just choose one of these. Yes, an adequate one for our needs. Yes, but it's not enough. No, but we need one. Or no, it's not a priority for us. Select one of those. And we have some responses still trickling in. And it looks like we've got most of them in now. All right, Rick.
Okay, adequate, no, but we need one. No, not a priority. So I think the two main variables, I think this has been a consistent theme, is how do we get more budget for this? I think the real process that we're talking about is that you can quantify the value from a multitude of different areas within your organization, to how you support and get your products actually produced, to the internal people in different parts of your organization. Once that impact is evaluated, it's gonna resonate with your entire organization. And so again, some of the areas to highlight, like I mentioned before, is obviously the cost of having a breach, the cost of having to rebuild the reputation. Those are things that resonate well with companies that are dependent. If Apple has some significant impact on their organization because of a breach, it affects their ability to do business. And there are tangible ways to kind of identify that. So let's talk about budget. Let's talk about how we actually approach that. Just to give you an idea of some different industries, healthcare industries budget 3% towards this, and in terms of budgets, almost 40% of all breaches come from this specific industry. Typical cost is 1 to 2% the cost of a data breach. The typical cost of training is 1 to 2% the cost of a data breach. So that means that if you have a data breach, the investment is so minimal compared to the prevention of any. I mean, if a company had just invested just to prevent one breach, which on average, like I said before, is about $11.6 million, their investment is minuscule compared to what they need to do from that perspective. And there's really two variables here. So if we're looking at an average breach of about $11.6 million, the technology solutions, the firewalls, the managed services, the NOC monitoring 24/7, the training of your IT security engineers so they understand how to lock down your network, the assessment, all of that stuff contributes to a reduction of about $4 million off of a typical breach. Now, enterprise security governance efforts, which includes training, can reduce this by an additional $1.5 million. So you're reducing your potential breach cost by potentially 10%. That is the impact of having a successful program in place. And now that we've talked about a little bit about some of the impacts and the importance of obviously putting an awareness program in place, let's talk about best practices and what an awareness program should look like, and we'll continue from there. So what is the goal? So we now know that from an executive level, it's important that they protect the image of the organization. It's important in this specific world as technology gets more and more complex, and as they start to discover how to even standardize compliance within the security industry. And one example would be, for example, in the retail industry where you have credit card transactions, and you have to not only monitor how they do it from the point of sale, but you also have to manage it from the back office. You also have to manage it with your relationships to your bank. So you have all of these increasing sophistication inside your organization on potential challenges for keeping your security locked down. So the training and putting in of a consistent program is going to be able to create consistent behavior. And what your real goal here is, at the end of the day, look, you want to maintain that trust and loyalty, obviously with your customers, with your brand awareness, all that stuff. You want to make sure that you have that incorporated into your how you position your marketing and your messaging for your company. You want to make sure that you're not going to be a victim of obviously some of these potential events. But at the end of the day, whether it's resonating from the CEO or to the individuals, it's really about protecting your revenue and profits. That's it. How are you going to do that? How are you going to make sure that you make your data security part of the actual review process? This is an integral part of it. So let's talk about culture shift. So one exercise that we used to do, being in a security organization, we obviously need to make sure that we're tight as can be from a security perspective. We had biometrics and all those different fun tools to play with. But one simple thing that we would do, like every Monday, our security engineers would basically be trying to brute force or attack our passwords. They would try to break into our passwords. They had some software, or they used their own tools, and they would literally be scanning through each and every letter, every digit, every number. And what we would do is we'd actually create a ranking system. So you would get an email and said, okay, Joe Smith, it took them 6 minutes for their password to be identified. Rick Rojo, it took them 2 or 3 days. So this is something that was embedded into the culture of our organization. So what did it mean? It means that there was a sense of pride that we had developed in ensuring that everyone is putting that extra effort out there, because you don't want to be that person that's the first one on that list, that their password gets interrupted. And this is a culture shift. This is how you get people to understand how they need to be doing things from a day-to-day. And again, this is another level of importance and why it's needed in our current technical environment. Some of the areas that are important: linking security protection directly to business objectives. Is your company trying to save money as an organization? making that tangible connection between investing in an awareness program and preventing potential costs, protecting your client base. Those are all solid pieces of material that will help make sure that you're in line with your company objectives. Board level priority. This isn't something that you hope that your HR organization buys into, or that you have specific groups that are testing whether this policy is working or not. This has to be something that is brought in at the board level and it's communicated all the way down. Reinforcing and acknowledging new behaviors. Reinforce and acknowledge. One of the benefits of using a venue like e-learning to communicate some of the requirements, for example, like your PCI standards and your requirements for how you manage credit card transactions, is that as we start to better understand what can be regulated, the compliance issues with data security, as we start to understand those better and better, that means that there's also going to be continuous updates to regulations, to compliance items. So you need to make sure that whatever you're doing, you're also putting something in your culture that's going to be flexible and it's going to be able to expand with those changes. Policy is not enough. I think we all know this. It's not enough to have a new hire come in and sign that they're not going to go to X, Y, and Z websites, because the impact of just one incident crippling an organization is substantial. So whereas 10 to 15 years ago, a policy was a good guideline so that you knew that you don't walk out of the facility with company equipment, or you knew that you had to have a certain password protected. The ability and the complexity of having virtual offices, of having people mobile, of using mobile devices, you need to have a methodology that resonates with people, that resonates so that they are changing their behavior and they are actually implementing that in the organization. So why isn't our security awareness training program working? You're just checking the box. You're just having them sign off on a policy. There is my consistent, when we used to put policies in place, even 10 or 15 years ago, my understanding is that we would sign a paper, and then if we had questions, we really had to remember back to see, oh, well, can I do this or can I not do this? Well, what you find now is you have people that are sitting there in the middle of doing their job, and they get an email, and they're not sure if it's relevant. They're not sure how they need to handle it. The better educated they are on how to handle those situations, or how to handle, we'll just say, the gray type situations, the gray area, they're going to be more efficient on how they're doing their job, and you're, as an organization, you're going to be filling that necessary gap to not only make sure that there's a technology structure in place to support your data, but you also have, the human factor is addressed. The other thing that you want to make sure in doing is this isn't a video solves everything. Let's go look at the video and you're ready to go. That's the same effect of signing a paper. You read it once, you might understand a little bit of it, but it doesn't really change the behavior. So what you get really from developing an awareness program, especially in an e-learning environment, is you have the ability to change behavior. You can actually introduce a topic, you can make sure that they're practicing that topic, and make sure that they're testing on it. So you have a multitude of different ways to make sure that the behavior that you're looking for is being solidified. Management doesn't buy in. That's obviously another sign. If you're out trying to pull for funds and no one is supporting you, HR doesn't understand what the relevance is of increasing this specific budget, you need to get those people to buy in. The more people you have in your corner and see what you're trying to get done from an organizational standpoint, the more successful you're going to be. Okay, so how do we recognize a successful security and awareness training program? A lot of different ways. You walk into the office and you're bragging that you actually did not, in fact, send $10,000 to a country overseas in anticipation of getting $500,000 in return. Because we all know that works, right? High success rate on those type of stuff. So phishing emails, we're not clicking on things that we don't know about. We're not clicking on addresses that we're not familiar. Simple things. When you're walking into your office and it says visitors and security, and you're going through the employee entrance and you're holding a door open and they don't have a badge, you need to make sure that you're not holding, you're taking that kind of awareness. Locking their computers, complex passwords. If your password includes quantum, equations mixed in with the birth date of your grandmother on your mother's side, divided by the birth rate in the city of, a city in Malaysia, stuff like that. Complex passwords, those work. The number of incident report increases, but the number of actual incidents drops. Again, all of this is awareness. What it means is you don't have to rely on that one person in the office that seems to know every single policy of what's going on, because you have a multitude of people that can say, look, you shouldn't be clicking on that link and here's why. Or, you know what, you left your phone on your desk, I was able to go in and check your emails, whatever the process is. I'm not recommending that, by the way, but you have a multitude of people that are all going to be involved in the process. Again, erasing the whiteboard, don't leave critical data on there. It's just about taking ownership of the data of your company. There's people, Apple, Samsung, they're obviously, one of them might have borrowed, the other one might have borrowed, I don't know. So you're going to have situations like that, and you want to protect your data on a multitude of ways.
All right, this is our next polling question. Do you know what questions to ask when evaluating training programs? Just select the one that's most relevant to you. Yes, you do. No, you don't. Sort of, kind of. Do you know what questions to ask when you're evaluating training programs? All right. All right, looks like we've got most of the answers in. Go ahead and close up the poll.
Okay, looks like sort of is a definitive answer. And again, all of this resonates with the complexity of what putting an effective technology program looks like now. What it looks like, how you support the technology, and a lot of people, they just don't know. A lot of people don't know that there's PCI, that there's actually compliance boards that provide rules for how you should be doing your credit card transactions or how you should be supporting it on the back end. One figure that I saw is organizations that had a PCI awareness program, and by PCI, again, that's a personal card information, that it substantially affects, there's an association obviously tied to the companies that get breached, the amount of loss tied to those breaches. And so those are all things that people don't know specifically what are the right questions to ask. The questions might be as simple as, we are a store, we've been doing everything with hardline to our computers, but now we're switching to nothing but iPads. That's how we do our register now. What kind of risks are tied to that? How do we educate the people about those risks? So that's what you're going to find out in terms of evaluating training programs. Picking a training program. So again, things that are going to be important, and I had mentioned earlier, obviously I meant payment card industry as opposed to personal, but so payment card industry in terms of PCI. So what's important for an actual training program? Content aligned to your needs. And what I mean by that is you have people that understand that your specific industry, you might have mobile threats, you might have desktop threats, manufacturing, whatever the needs are, you're able to put a program that's going to address that. And it could be something as simple as, how do I address people that have limited access to technology? How do I address the need for flexibility throughout my organization to make sure that they know what's going on within your security awareness program? Easy to customize. Diverse learner roles. You obviously are going to have different responsibilities throughout your organization. Ideally, if you want a message to resonate from the top down, you want to make sure that it's in line with the company structure, and that there's an effective way to not only communicate it, but also to ensure that the proper training is going to the right people, and that you actually have documentation to show that these people have completed and done the training necessary. Making the program to last, like I'd highlighted earlier, as we get a better understanding of how to address challenges and vulnerabilities within data within organizations, there's going to be more regulations. There's going to be more compliance-related issues on how to address that. So make sure that whatever program you have in place gives you the ability to track. The provider is going to give you the ability to track current and pending regulatory. You want them to be doing that work for you. You want them to be able to say, look, this is what's happening in the next 6 months. This is how we're going to address that on that specific topic. Finally, built to industry standards. Make sure that they understand what's required, whether it's SCORM standards, 508 compliant. Do they understand how to integrate into a large environment? What's required? Are they using a SABA system or Cornerstone, or what is important to them from that aspect? Because that obviously resonates with HR, resonates with a bunch of different organizations with the company if this is going to be under one umbrella. And the other thing too is like I'd highlighted earlier, you want to make sure that there's diversity in how the training is presented. You want to make sure that they don't just encompass you with just video, but they also tie it together with real-world examples and practical applications. So this is really the last thing I'm going to kind of focus on. Motivational design model. Again, this is a design model that's been proven to be successful, and this is an approach that is critical to putting into a successful program. So attention, focused and engaged. You want to make sure that you're testing a bunch of different sensory items, that you're actually having to evaluate situations, go through examples. Relevance, is it relevant to the job that you're in? Is it covering interests that you have? Does it even look like your organization, when you're doing there? Are they showing you pictures of a manufacturing facility and you're training people in an office? So all of those things are relevant. Confidence. Competence and capability built through challenges and learning and experience. You want to make sure that you're having them work and think through the process when they're getting a training program utilized. And again, recognition that they're being successful at whatever they're trying to get accomplished. Motivational design, this is a very instrumental part of the process, and a lot of this has to do just making sure that you're giving people an actual tool where they're going to come away with the retention that is necessary. So I'm going to start wrapping up a little bit here. So training and reinforcement. Turning good behaviors into habits through reinforcement. That comes through effective training. It is an actual program that you need to put in place. It includes multiple variables, and there's a lot of things that contribute to having a successful program. But the ability to have an outlet for a specific training tool will provide a consistent message to your organization. It will provide the ability to be able to track and see who's actually completing. It will provide protection in case you actually do come in some situations where you need to provide documentation. All of these contribute to the overall behavior of your organization and making sure that you're having consistent habits on how you approach security. And So the end goal is there are concrete ways to affect your organization with a security awareness program. Consistency in training, high interactivity, customizability within your organization in terms of what the needs are for the specific group or industry that you're in. At the end of the day, what you're really looking to do is put a program in place that is being accepted and pushed down at an executive level, that has buy-in not just from a financial perspective but an actual implementation level, and to have something in place that consistently reinforces behavior. It's too complex, and we're adding new devices. You know, I'm wearing right now this little Galaxy Gear watch, and I have no idea how this is going to affect my ability to check emails from work in the future, and if it's any different from that tied to my phone. So you're getting new technologies all the time, cloud technologies. The moment you put in a structured program, you're going to have the flexibility to adapt with the industry and to kind of grow as the industry grows, and at the same time protecting your company's bottom line.
All right, and this is our final polling question. And this is a question about your interest in our information security products. If you are interested and would like to have someone from Workplace Answers contact you after the webinar, please click on the button for yes, I'd like a 30-minute consultation. But please only click that button if you would like to be contacted for a consultation on our products. If you're not interested in being contacted right now, just select one of the other options that fits you, or don't do anything at all, and we'll just progress to the next slide. All right. Still have a few answering.
Okay, Adam, I'm going to wrap up, and I'll let you take it from there, if that's okay.
All right. Thank you.
Okay. And you know what? I actually did have a couple questions, and you wanted me to answer that via chat or email. Yeah, a lot of the questions that we're getting obviously is about the availability of the presentation. And like Adam had mentioned at the beginning, you'll be sent an email in a couple of days where you'll have access to this information. Obviously, if you would like to understand a little bit better about how different organizations treat their awareness program, and you'd like to, you're certainly welcome to reach out to our organization, and we can talk to you how we work with specific companies. The other question I had too, obviously people know what PCI is, but for those of you that don't know what PCI security standards are, this is generally not, these are guidelines. It's not necessarily a law in most states, but what it is there's brand members like American Express, Discovery Financial Services, JCB, MasterCard, Visa Europe. All these people have kind of been working on identifying these specific requirements for your organization. So it is, I won't say fairly complex, but we do understand items like that. And again, that's you know, it does a significant impact to know that you are actually in compliance with some of these requirements from an overall security awareness program. And I'm going to hand it off to Adam. I think we're about that time.
All right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us today, and thank you, Rick, for an awesome presentation. Please visit workplaceanswers.com for more information on our information security, HR compliance, as well as many other types of training for your workplace.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That does conclude today's webinar. We thank you for your participation and ask that you please disconnect. Have a great day.